Who are you? Where did you come from? Who relies on you, and who do you rely on? Dig Your Own Grave from Monte Cook Games promises new options to create unforgettable, compelling, and perhaps even tragic characters for the Old Gods of Appalachia role playing game. That is the promise. How well does this book fulfill that promise? Well, you're about to find out because I'll be sharing my review right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I'll be sharing my review of Old Gods of Appalachia, Dig Your Own Grave from Monte Cook Games. This is written by Shauna Germain with Cam Collins, Sean K. Reynolds, and Steve Shell. This 128-page hardcover is available now. It carries an MSRP of $44.99. If you want to grab just the PDF, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $17.99. Having said that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got Dig Your Own Grave for Old Gods of Appalachia. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Monte Cook Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, I swear I thought I had reviewed this book. I shared a first look video at Dig Your Own Grave all the way back in, I think it was October of last year. And then I just received the two latest books for Old Gods of Appalachia at Gen Con. And then I realized, my gosh, I didn't review Dig Your Own Grave. So I'm taking care of that right now. Plus, I've got more coverage of Old Gods of Appalachia as well as the Magnus Archives that I am going to get out well before Halloween, because I know folks out there are starting to make their plans for some Halloween adventures with their favorite role-playing games. So I want to get this information out there in your hands. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life. So let's give credit where credit is due. If you're not familiar with Old Gods of Appalachia, it is what is considered to be a holler horror role-playing game. It is based upon the popular Old Gods of Appalachia podcast, and you don't have to be familiar with the podcast to be able to run and enjoy Old Gods of Appalachia. That is an important thing to note. Now, this book here is player-facing. So there is nothing contained in this volume that can't be put in front of your players. So this is player facing. There's another book, which is All Your Gods Are Dead. That is a game master facing book. I will be sharing my review of that very shortly. And then, of course, we've got Come Hell or High Water, which is the latest release for Old Gods of Appalachia. I will be reviewing that too. So we are going to start off with a bit of information about what's in this book. Now, Old Gods of Appalachia is built on Cypher, which is the role-playing system which powers just about every Monte Cook game that I'm aware of. So this utilizes the setup of adjective, noun, verb as far as your characters go. So, of course, the adjective is the descriptor. Then the noun is your type. And then, of course, the verb is a foci. So we've got new descriptors. We've got new foci. We've got a new way of kind of doing a bit of a create your own adventure for character creation. Talk about that in just a little bit when we get to it. But we also have some new options as far as creating connections within the community. We've got equipment and price guides and some great advice on how to run a horror role-playing game, and specifically Old Gods of Appalachia. So we are going to get into some new descriptors. We have 11 in total. Some of these are really cool, very interesting. These provide for additional skills as well as points for your pools, because once again, this does use Cypher as its core system. Few tweaks from Cypher system. It's actually more similar to the new Cypher than Cypher system, because there are some things that were present in Old Gods of Appalachia that have now transformed over to Cypher, the new edition, which I've just reviewed in case you missed that. So you're going to get some additional points for your pools. You get a skill. You get an ability for the most part. You might get an inability also. But some of these, like I said, are pretty wild, like eerie. I like eerie. Your character is off-putting for some reason. So they make people uncomfortable. They make them nervous. Really cool role-playing prompts there. Another descriptor is ghostly. You're a ghost. So you've got that. We also have beloved. So some of these are a little bit darker than others. We've got plain spoken, which basically means you always call it like you see it. You're not there to BS anybody. You really don't lie. We have joshing, which you're essentially a pretty good humored character. You're always joking, although some people might think you never take anything seriously. You actually do, but you also realize that if you let life get you down, things could turn out to be relatively bleak. Then we get some new foci, and the foci take a bit of a darker turn. Now, these don't necessarily mean that the characters are evil or black-hearted or anything like that. They do just sort of have a little bit of the something wicked this way comes vibe to their proceedings. So as an example, we've got digs their own grave, which is somebody who, for whatever reason, just always seems to be on the wrong side of things. Things just happen to them that they just don't really even bring upon themselves. Maybe they do bring things upon themselves. Fit to be tied, somebody who's always angry, but that also can drive them. So it could be an impetus to that character. You know, they could be angry all the time, but also kind of keep that anger buried and allow that to fuel them, like has seen some shit, which is somebody who has been around a lot of blocks. So we've got quite a few of the foci. Serves no master. That's one I especially like. I think is pretty cool. Of course, with foci, we are going to get the various different things that get unlocked based upon the tier of the characters. So, of course, these foci become more powerful as your character advances in tiers. Steals the nickels off of a dead man's eyes. Means they're a thief. Doesn't necessarily mean they have to steal from everybody. So they might have a little bit of a code of honor where they don't steal from their friends and family. But then again, maybe they do. Whistles in the woods, someone who's very rarely afraid of anything. Once again, because they've seen some things in their travels. Then we get into reap what you sowed. And this is kind of a create your own adventure portion for character creation. It is interesting. There are 6 of them. So I got to be honest, you're probably not going to get a ton of usage out of them, especially if your players aren't interested in playing the sorts of characters that are going to be basically created by these backgrounds. It's interesting. I got to be honest, mileage is going to really vary. I personally probably wouldn't use it because I think it kind of limits the character options as far as the sort of character that you're going to end up with after you go and make your decisions through the create your own adventure sort of thing. Quite a bit of page space is devoted to this as well. I'm sure some folks are going to love it. Other people will be like, it's fine. I kind of fall into the, it's fine. Right? I wish more page space had been devoted to the descriptors and the foci as opposed to that. Also, want to mention there are little bits of fiction that pop up from time to time. It's okay, but it's also something I would have rather seen more gameable material that's in the book rather than a page or two of fiction. Next up, we've got Kith and Kin for connections. This gives you a lot of various different options as far as how are you connected to the other players or to the community. So that makes for some interesting options there. And then, of course, some of the options will get more detail about it. So you could have maybe the connection is one of the other player characters is an ex of some sort, or maybe you all went to school together. That's a possibility also. So we got a good amount of page space devoted to that. Then we get into This One's Mine, and it is goods and currency. Unlike most cipher games, Old Gods of Appalachia does actually use currency. So you'll track your dollars and such. But once again, this is not some big, deep economic dive either. So I know a lot of people enjoy cipher having pretty abstract currency. This isn't really much of an issue there. And then we're going to basically wrap up with some advice about running Old Gods of Appalachia and horror role-playing games in general. And I will say that there's a lot of really good advice here on how to spook your players, kind of creep them out without freaking them out. So I definitely like that too. So that is a peek at Old Gods of Appalachia, Dig Your Own Grave from Monte Cook Games. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Production quality-wise, solid. I will mention that the paper stock seems to be a little bit lighter than what we see with Monte Cook Games these days. This did come out in 2025, so that is a possibility there. It's also got a sheen to the paper, which I'm never a big fan of. It's not a huge deal, but I prefer more of a matte finish on the pages, which I got to say, I think the new Cipher book does have more of a matte finish on its pages and a heavier paper stock. But still, this book will hold up. It's 128 pages. It's got a stitched binding. As long as you don't abuse the book, it's going to be fine. Love the artwork throughout. Always dig the artwork for Old Gods of Appalachia because some of it's spooky, some of it's scary. Some of it is just setting a scene or a mood or a tone. I definitely dig that. Something else I really like about the Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game is the fact that it respects the residents of the region. This is not hillbilly horror, as I sometimes refer to other games. This is holler horror, and it's got a very particular vibe. It's a very unique role-playing game. It is a horror role-playing game. It's got a bit of cosmic horror to it, but it's not Lovecraftian in nature. So definitely dig that. Something else I really like is there is heart to this role-playing game, and that comes through in Dig Your Own Grave as well. And there's hope. Even if the player characters are down on their luck, they don't have two nickels to rub together. Maybe they've got no place to stay. They're up against huge odds in order to survive. There is still hope. And I really, really dig that because you need that in horror role playing games. It can't just be grim dark all the time because what would be the point? If everything's already been decided, the world is going to end, the cataclysm's coming, then what's the point of role playing in a setting like that because everything's already set in stone? Love the fact that Old Gods of Appalachia deals with family, community, hope, as well as tragedy, despair, death, and horror. Really, really nicely done. Like the descriptors quite a bit. I enjoyed the foci. I think that players out there are going to get a lot of use out of that. What I don't think people are going to get a ton of use out of is that create your own adventure background creation. I mean, it's fine. I just don't think I would use it. Like I said, I would have rather seen a lot more page space devoted to more advice, more foci, more descriptors, but it's okay. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Old Gods of Appalachia, Dig Your Own Grave, a 7 out of 10. All right, that is it for this time out. If you enjoy the Gaming Gang and find this a valuable resource, there are a few ways that you can actually help support the outlet. You'll find all the information down in the show notes, such as our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as DriveThruRPG. A one-time donation can be made by way of PayPal, and you can even become a monthly member of our Patreon. Once again, it's all in the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll find an invite link to our Discord server. Absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell and select all notifications because you'll not only be informed when I share videos such as this review, you'll also find out when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central as I bring you the latest in tabletop role-playing game news and more. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you will never see on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.